The rancher, Thomas Miller, had always preferred the quiet rhythm of his life on the ranch. His days began with the sun rising over the vast fields of golden grass and the gentle hills in the distance. By habit, he walked the same paths every morning, checking on the cattle, repairing fences, and tending to the small orchard near the barn. The land was his sanctuary, a place where the noise of the world seemed to vanish. Life was simple, steady, and unchanging, just the way he liked it. But one evening, as the sun dipped low behind the mountains and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Thomas noticed something unusual near the edge of the barnyard. A figure stood alone, framed by the shadows of the old wooden fence. At first, he thought it might be one of the neighbor's children wandering too far. But as he drew closer, he saw that it was a young woman, standing stiffly, her clothes worn and dusty, her hair tangled in knots. Her posture was rigid, almost as if she had been waiting for something or someone. Thomas felt a sudden tug in his chest, a strange mixture of curiosity and concern. He had seen many things in his life, but something about her presence unsettled him. He slowed his steps, keeping a cautious distance. "Hello?" he called softly, not wanting to startle her. The woman turned slowly, her eyes wide and wary. There was a hollow look in them, a shadow of pain that made Thomas hesitate. Then she spoke, her voice trembling, almost a whisper. "I'm filthy, inside and out." Thomas froze. He had not expected such words, and the way she said them, so quiet, so honest, sent a chill through him. He instinctively stepped closer, though still careful not to frighten her. "Hey, it's all right," he said gently. "You don't have to be alone here. Do you need some help?" For a long moment she said nothing. Her gaze dropped to the ground, and Thomas could see her hands, small, thin, covered in dirt, clenched tightly in front of her. It was clear she had been on her own for some time. After what felt like an eternity, she nodded slowly, almost imperceptibly. Thomas approached her carefully, taking the blanket he always carried in the back of his truck. He wrapped it around her shoulders, feeling the slight tremble in her body as she accepted the warmth. There was something fragile about her, something that made him feel protective, yet unsure of what to do next. He knew he couldn't just leave her here. The night was coming, and the air in the mountains grew cold very quickly. "Come with me," he said softly, leading her toward the farmhouse. The woman hesitated, then followed, her steps light and cautious. Thomas could feel her fear, but he also sensed a deep longing for safety, a desire to be somewhere she could finally rest. Inside the farmhouse, the air smelled of wood smoke and fresh bread, a scent that seemed to calm her. Thomas guided her to the kitchen, where the fire crackled softly in the stove. He placed a chair near the warmth and gestured for her to sit. "Do you want some water?" he asked. She nodded, and he poured a glass, setting it in front of her. Her hands shook slightly as she took it, and Thomas waited patiently, saying nothing. The silence between them was filled with unspoken questions. Thomas didn't want to push her, knowing that trust was something earned, not demanded. Slowly she began to speak, her words halting at first, then gathering strength. I've been on my own for a while," she said. "I didn't have anyone, and I didn't know where to go." Her voice wavered, but there was honesty in it, a rawness that tugged at Thomas's heart. He nodded, listening intently. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer advice yet. He just listened, letting her tell him her story at her own pace. There were pauses, moments when she seemed lost in thought, staring at the fire as if memories were both a comfort and a burden. Thomas realized that whatever she had been through, it had left marks that went far deeper than what he could see. After some time, he gently asked, "Do you want to stay here tonight? You can sleep by the fire, and tomorrow we'll figure things out." She looked at him, a flicker of relief crossing her face. She nodded, and for the first time since he had met her, she seemed a little lighter, a little more human again. Thomas fetched a blanket from the hall closet and carefully spread it on the small cot in the corner of the kitchen. He helped her settle under it, noticing how tense her shoulders remained. "It's all right," he said softly. "You're safe here," the woman nodded, her lips barely moving. "Thank you," she whispered. I haven't felt safe in a long time." Thomas didn't respond immediately. He simply watched her, seeing the exhaustion etched into her face. The way her body seemed to carry the weight of too many years of struggle. He realized then that helping her wasn't just about offering food or shelter. It was about giving her a chance to breathe, to exist without fear, even if just for a little while. As the fire crackled and the night grew deeper, Thomas quietly went about his chores, keeping an ear on the soft breathing of the woman. He wondered how someone could endure so much and still have the courage to ask for help, even in the smallest way. There was strength in her fragility, resilience hidden beneath her trembling frame. For hours, neither of them spoke. The rancher worked on mending a broken chair, while the woman stared into the fire, lost in her thoughts. Occasionally, she would glance up, meeting his gaze briefly, and then look away again. Thomas sensed that her walls were beginning to lower ever so slightly. But he also knew that it would take time for her to truly trust him. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, and the first stars appeared in the deep blue sky. Thomas stepped to the window and looked out, then back at her. The thought that had come to him earlier returned. Life on the ranch was quiet, predictable, but tonight everything had changed. The world he had known for so long had suddenly expanded, and he wasn't sure what would come next. All he knew was that he had a responsibility to help her, to protect her until she could stand on her own again. By the time she finally drifted into a restless sleep, Thomas had made a silent promise to himself. He would not turn her away. He would not let fear dictate his actions. For now all that mattered was that she was safe, that she had a place to rest, and that she had someone willing to listen. And so, in that quiet kitchen, surrounded by the warmth of the fire and the soft creak of the old farmhouse, a fragile bond began to form, one that neither of them could yet fully understand, but one that would change both of their lives forever. The morning sunlight streamed gently through the small kitchen window, illuminating the room where the young woman still lay sleeping. Thomas Miller, the rancher, stirred quietly, careful not to wake her. The fire from the previous night had died down to glowing embers, and the smell of fresh bread and brewed coffee filled the air. Thomas had woken early, as was his habit. But this morning there was a new feeling, a sense of responsibility, and concern that tugged at his chest. He looked at the cot where she slept, the blanket pulled up to her chin. Her breathing was steady, but her face showed traces of worry and fatigue. Thomas thought about her words from the previous day. "I'm filthy, inside and out." Those words had stayed with him all night, echoing in his mind. They were heavy words, filled with more meaning than he could yet understand. Gently, he prepared a small breakfast for her warm porridge with a little honey, some fresh fruit, and a glass of water. He placed the plate carefully on the table and waited. Slowly, the young woman opened her eyes, blinking at the morning light. For a moment, she seemed unsure of where she was. Then she saw Thomas and the food, and a faint smile appeared on her face. "Good morning," Thomas said softly. "I made some breakfast. You must be hungry." She nodded, her voice still quiet. "Thank you," she whispered. She ate slowly, as if savoring each bite, her hands shaking slightly. Thomas watched her carefully, noticing the nervous glances she gave to the room around her. Everything was new to her, the warmth, the safety, the quiet sounds of the ranch. It was a world she had not known for a long time, if ever. After breakfast, Thomas offered to show her around the property. She hesitated at first, then agreed. The ranch was large, stretching across rolling fields, dotted with cattle and a small orchard. Thomas pointed out the fences he had repaired, the barn where the horses lived, and the stream that ran behind the house. She listened quietly, sometimes asking questions, other times just observing. There was a sense of awe in her eyes, as though she could hardly believe she was standing in a place so calm, so alive. As they walked near the barn, Thomas noticed her gaze lingering on the animals. A gentle curiosity seemed to replace some of the fear in her eyes. "Do you like animals?" he asked. She nodded slowly. I used to. I haven't had much chance to be around them lately," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a sadness in her tone, a story behind her words that Thomas could sense but did not yet fully know. Finally, they returned to the farmhouse. And the young woman sat by the window, looking out at the fields. Thomas joined her, keeping a respectful distance. He wanted her to feel safe, to know that she could open up when she was ready. After a long silence, she began to speak. Her words were halting at first, but each sentence carried weight, honesty, and courage. I haven't had a safe place for a long time, she began. I've been moving from one place to another, trying to find somewhere I could belong. But everywhere I went, it was always the same. I was alone. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, and Thomas could see the pain etched on her face. Thomas nodded slowly, encouraging her to continue. He did not interrupt, knowing that the best thing he could do was listen. I didn't know who to trust, she said. People. They can hurt you in ways you don't even expect. I tried to protect myself, but sometimes it felt impossible. I felt dirty, not just outside, but inside. I felt like I didn't deserve kindness or care. Her voice cracked, and she looked down at her hands. Thomas felt a deep ache in his heart. He had never imagined that someone so young could carry such heavy burdens. He reached out gently, placing a hand near hers on the table. You're not dirty, he said softly. Not inside, not outside. You've been through a lot, yes, but that doesn't define who you are. You are stronger than you realize. For a moment, she seemed uncertain, as if she wasn't sure she believed him. Then she looked up, her eyes shimmering with tears. It doesn't feel like it, she whispered. It feels like I've lost myself. Thomas remained silent, letting her words hang in the air. He didn't want to offer empty comfort. He wanted her to feel heard, to understand that her pain was acknowledged and that she was not alone anymore. Over the next few days, they settled into a quiet routine. She helped Thomas with small chores around the ranch, feeding the animals, collecting eggs from the chickens, and tending to the small vegetable garden. Each task, simple as it was, seemed to give her a sense of purpose and normalcy. Thomas noticed small changes, the way her posture became less rigid, the way she began to smile at small victories. Like a chicken finally laying an egg or a fence repaired correctly. One afternoon, Thomas was fixing a broken fence near the edge of the pasture when she approached him with a question. Why do you help me? She asked. Her voice was cautious, almost as if she feared the answer. Thomas paused, leaning on his tool. Because everyone deserves a chance, he replied simply. Because no one should have to feel alone in the world. And because I can. Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness this time, but of gratitude. For so long, she had felt invisible, unwanted, unworthy. But Thomas's words, his actions, showed her that someone cared, that someone believed in her, even when she couldn't believe in herself. One evening, as the sun began to set and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Thomas helped her bring in firewood for the stove. The work was quiet, but the atmosphere was peaceful. She began to speak again, this time with a little more confidence. I've always wanted to feel safe, she said softly. To wake up in a place where I didn't have to worry about being hurt. I never thought that could happen for me. Thomas looked at her, seeing the vulnerability in her eyes. It can, he said firmly. It can start here, and it will. You just have to let it. For the first time, she seemed to believe him. There was a flicker of hope in her expression, a spark that had been absent for so long. She wasn't completely healed, not yet, but she had begun to trust again, and that was a start. Later that night, as they sat by the fire, Thomas noticed her staring at the blanket he had wrapped around her the first night. She reached out and touched it lightly, a small smile playing on her lips. I feel safe here, she said quietly. I think I can rest. Thomas nodded, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and relief. He had given her shelter, but more importantly, he had given her a sense of hope. He realized that sometimes the smallest gestures, the blanket, the warm meal, the gentle words could have the most profound impact on a person's life. The days passed slowly. But with each day, the young woman began to change. Her steps grew steadier, her laughter more frequent, and her eyes brighter. She still carried the weight of her past, But she no longer carried it alone. Thomas continued to offer guidance and support, never pushing, never judging, always patient. One morning, as they worked together in the orchard, she paused and looked around. I feel like I can breathe here, she said softly. Like I finally belong somewhere. Smiled, a rare warmth in his expression. You do belong, he said, and you will continue to belong. As long as you want to. In that moment, she understood that healing was not a single event, but a journey. And though the road ahead would have challenges, she knew she had found a safe place, a place where she could begin again, and someone who would walk with her every step of the way. The sun rose higher, casting golden light across the fields and the barn. The ranch, once quiet and predictable, now held a new energy, subtle but undeniable shift. The young woman was beginning to reclaim herself, piece by piece, and Thomas, too, found that life had opened up in ways he had never imagined. Together, they were forging a fragile but powerful bond, one built on trust, care, and the quiet understanding that even in a world that could be harsh and unforgiving, kindness and hope could exist. And so, in the calm and gentle rhythm of the ranch, the young woman's story continued, moving slowly toward healing, toward trust, and toward the promise of a life she had thought she would never know. Days turned into weeks on Thomas Miller's ranch. The young woman, who had once seemed so fragile and lost, was slowly learning to stand on her own. She helped with chores, fed the animals, tended to the garden, and even started assisting with the small repairs Thomas often had to make around the property. Each task, no matter how small, seemed to strengthen her confidence. The rancher noticed the change. The woman's eyes were no longer clouded with fear. Her posture was steadier. There was a light in her expression that had not been there when she first arrived. It was subtle at first, a smile lingering a little longer, a laugh that came more easily, but it was enough for Thomas to know that she was healing. One morning, as the first light of dawn touched the fields, Thomas found her sitting by the stream that ran behind the house. She was watching the water flow over the rocks, lost in thought. He walked over quietly, not wanting to disturb her. "You've been quiet?" Tom said softly, standing beside her. She turned to him and smiled faintly. "I've been thinking," she said. "Thinking about everything, and about myself. I don't feel empty anymore, I feel lighter." Thomas nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. "That's a good feeling," he said. "It takes time, but it comes." They sat together in silence for a few minutes, listening to the water gurgle and the wind rustled the trees. It was a quiet, peaceful moment, one that neither of them would forget. As the days passed, the woman began to open up more about her past. She spoke of hardships, of loneliness, and of mistakes she had made while trying to survive. But she also spoke of dreams she had long forgotten, dreams of learning, of helping others, of finding a place to call home. Thomas listened carefully, never judging, never rushing her. He knew that for her, sharing her story was a way to reclaim it, to take back the pieces of herself that had been lost. One evening, after a long day of work in the orchard, Thomas and the woman sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the mountains. She looked at him, her eyes clear and determined. "Thomas," she said softly, "I want to do more. I want to be useful, to give back. Even a little. I don't want to just take—" Thomas smiled, impressed by her courage. "You've already given so much," he said. "Your presence here has changed this place, just as this place has changed you. But if you want to help, there are always things that need doing." It helped she did. She began to take initiative, organizing chores, caring for the animals without prompting, and even teaching herself small tasks that Thomas had once done alone. The ranch, which had once been a quiet and solitary place, now felt alive with a new energy. The woman's determination, resilience, and gentle spirit were slowly weaving themselves into the very fabric of the land. One morning, Thomas asked her to help with the barn animals, a task that required patience and confidence. She hesitated, unsure if she could manage the stronger horses. Thomas placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You can do this," he said. I'll be right here if you need me." Taking a deep breath, she approached the stall. Her hands were steady, and her movements were careful but confident. She spoke softly to the horse, stroking its mane, and to Thomas's relief, it remained calm. When the task was complete, she looked up at him with a shy but proud smile. "I did it," she said, almost in disbelief. "You did," Thomas replied warmly. "And you'll do it again. And again. And each time, it will get easier." That evening, as they prepared dinner, the woman began to talk about her dreams in more detail. She spoke of learning to read more books, of traveling to see the world beyond the ranch, and even of helping other people who had been through hardships similar to hers. Thomas listened, heartened by her vision. "You have a strong heart," he said, "and a sharp mind. You can do whatever you set out to do. Don't ever forget that." Weeks became months, and the woman's transformation became more visible every day. Her laughter became more frequent, her smiles more natural. The fear that had once shadowed her every step was replaced with courage and curiosity. She had begun to take pride in herself, in her abilities, and in the small victories she achieved on the ranch one day. She worked in the orchard. Thomas watched her from a distance. She moved with confidence, her hands steady, her eyes bright with purpose. He remembered the first day he had met her, standing at the edge of his barnyard. Eyes filled with fear, trembling and uncertain. The contrast was striking. The woman who now walked through the orchard seemed almost unrecognizable from the girl who had arrived weeks ago. She was stronger, more confident, more alive. That evening, as the sun set in a brilliant display of oranges and purples, the woman approached Thomas with a thoughtful look. "Thomas," she said, "I want to thank you for everything. For giving me a chance, for helping me see myself again. I don't know where I'd be without this place, without you." Thomas shook his head gently. "No one does this alone," he said. "You did the hard work yourself. I just helped guide you along the way. Remember, it's your strength that brought you here." She smiled, a genuine warm smile that reached her eyes. I think I'm ready for the next step. To face the world again, but with what I've learned here?" Thomas nodded, proud but careful. "You'll go far," he said, "and you'll always have a place here whenever you need it." Over time, the young woman began exploring the world beyond the ranch. She enrolled in classes, learned new skills, and volunteered in the nearby community to help those in need. The strength and kindness she had rediscovered on the ranch guided her in everything she did. She faced challenges, as life always brings, but she met them with courage, determination, and the confidence she had gained. Thomas, meanwhile, continued his life on the ranch, but it was different now. He had witnessed the remarkable change in her, the resilience of the human spirit, and he carried that lesson with him every day. The ranch, once a quiet sanctuary, had become a place of transformation, not just for the young woman, but for him as well. On a quiet evening, the two of them sat by the fire, reminiscing about the first days she had arrived. "Do you remember the first night?" she asked softly. "When I said I was filthy, inside and out?" Thomas nodded, a gentle smile on his face. "I do, and now look at you. You've come so far." She looked at him, eyes shining with gratitude. "I feel clean now, inside and out. Not because I forgot my past, but because I've learned to heal from it, and I've learned to love myself again." Thomas felt a lump in his throat. He had helped her find a safe place, but she had helped herself find something far greater: hope, courage, and self-respect. As the fire crackled and the night grew deeper, the two sat together in companionable silence. Outside, the stars sparkled in the clear sky, and the ranch, bathed in soft moonlight, seemed peaceful and whole. The young woman had transformed from someone who had felt lost and abandoned to someone who was strong, capable, and ready to embrace the world. The journey was not over. Healing never truly ends, but she had taken the most important steps. And Thomas, the quiet rancher who had once lived a simple, solitary life, had been privileged to witness the incredible power of resilience and human kindness. In the heart of the ranch, surrounded by the animals, the fields, and the endless sky. A bond had formed, one built on trust, compassion, and the unspoken understanding that even in the darkest moments, a single act of kindness could change a life forever. The young woman rose from her chair and looked around the ranch, breathing deeply. "I feel ready," she said softly, a smile on her face. "Ready to face the world and to keep moving forward. And I'll never forget this place or what you've done for me." Thomas nodded, his heart full. "You'll do great things," he said, "and you'll always have a home here whenever you need it." And with that, the ranch settled into its quiet rhythm once more. But this time it was different, full of hope, full of life, and full of the promise of new beginnings. The young woman had transformed her life, step by step, with courage, trust, and determination. And the rancher, who had simply offered shelter and kindness, had witnessed the extraordinary power of human resilience, leaving both of them forever changed.